So I recently was invited to speak at a former professor of mine's college senior class about preparing for life after school. And he invited me to speak about money and the future. And it was awesome. And it gave me hope that kids are asking good questions and that the next generation is going to be just fine. So I wrote this piece for them. I'm Ali Jane Ayers. I write a Substack called Money Changes Everything. And this one's called The Kids Are All Right. College students are asking the right questions about money and their future. When I was 22, I cared about two things: books and becoming the sort of person who knew things about books. I lived in the soft, caffeinated cocoon of literature at my quaint little liberal arts school in upstate New York, and never once thought about compound interest or the future version of myself who would complain about neck pain and the price of a burger. When I got my first job, I nearly skipped contributing to my 401k because I just didn't know what it was. It was a cubicle mate who suggested I contribute because it was the right thing to do. When my first paycheck arrived, I was so stunned by taxes that I cried and called my dad. I got a second job to continue to afford to live in New York City. I felt so stupid, so ignorant, and so completely overwhelmed. This is why I get excited when college students ask me about Roth IRAs and insurance deductibles and investing. They are not expected to understand any of this yet. They have not earned enough money to lose any. They have not felt the sting of a surprise tax bill or signed a lease they secretly knew they could not afford. Many of them are still figuring out what city they will land in when they graduate. And yet, they want to know how the world works before it speeds up. When a former professor invited me to speak to his senior seminar this fall, I expected polite nodding and a couple of budgeting questions. I've done a few of these talks, and the biggest problem is attendance. What 21-year-old wants to show up to a lecture on personal finance? Instead, I walked into a room full of students already wrestling with the financial realities most adults dodge for decades. They were honest about their worries without sliding into fatalism. They were alert, thoughtful, and determined to understand the mechanics of adulthood that rarely get explained: taxes, insurance, credit, investing, healthcare, and the price of trying to live in a big city. Here are the questions they sent me. I have not embellished anything. This is what they genuinely wanted to know. How does a Roth IRA work, and how do I start one? What should I do if I need financial advice but cannot afford a planner? What's the best way to manage money in the years between undergrad and graduate school? How do I choose between employer health insurance and staying on a parent's plan? How early should I start saving for retirement? How do I make a budget I will actually follow? How much do I need saved to move to a major city? Is it necessary to invest in stocks, and how do I learn? How do I build credit without wrecking it? Which loans should I pay off first? If I freelance or mix self-employment with a part-time job, how do I set myself up for stability? What is the biggest financial mistake most people make right after graduating college? How can someone make an informed choice about graduate school when it requires substantial debt? Oh, love that question. Are multiple credit cards helpful for building credit and earning rewards, or do they encourage bad spending habits? How much money should I be saving right now? How many months of expenses belong in an emergency fund, and does that change if I do not have major financial responsibilities yet? See, these questions are awesome. If I'm not fully employed after graduation, how do I prepare for the future? Should emergency savings live in a separate account? Should I pay my credit card balance in full or stick to the minimum payment? You should pay the balance in full. When is the right moment to upgrade my lifestyle, and what are the signs I am ready or not ready? These are not lightweight questions. They are the pillars of future stability. These questions tell me that these students see the economy clearly, and they clearly understand the stakes. They notice the low wages and impossible rents. They're not pretending things are better than they are. They want to be prepared. What struck me most is that every one of these questions circles the same core fear. They want to know what to do first. They want a sequence, a structure that keeps them from guessing their way through adulthood. I've written about this before, and it always comes back to the same truth. The real problem is not ignorance, it's the lack of a framework. This is why I created the savings order of operations. It gives you a way to rank decisions so you are not trying to make 5 financial choices at once with no sense of priority. If you need the full breakdown, you can read it on my Substack. It's a post called The Savings Order of Operations. So if you're a professor, invite me to speak to your class. If you run a career center, let me teach a workshop. If you oversee a senior seminar or a grad program, let me design a one-credit course. Young adults deserve guidance for their personal finance before the stakes get higher. They deserve a clear, unembellished education in the parts of adulthood that shape their freedom and choice. Here's the course I would teach. A practical money class for life after college, a 6-part syllabus for emerging adults. A course designed to give students the financial foundation they were never taught. No jargon, no shame, no assumption of prior knowledge, just clarity, tools, and confidence. Class 1, what you earn and what you keep. Topics: how to read your paycheck, how withholding works, How to avoid surprise tax bills. Setting up your own financial infrastructure. What FICA is and why it takes a bite out of your soul. Outcome. The students understand their paychecks and learn how to keep more of what they earn. Class 2. Budgeting and the real cost of moving out. Topics. How to build a functional budget. Estimating rent and expenses in a major city. Uncovering the hidden costs of independence. How to balance spending, saving, and debt. Outcome. Students create a realistic plan for life after graduation. Class 3. Debt, student loans, credit scores, and borrowing wisely. Topics. What to know about federal and private student loans. Loan repayment strategies. What interest does while you sleep. Credit cards, points, and responsible use. How credit scores work and how to improve them. What lenders look for and how to avoid scams. Outcome. Students gain control over borrowing and protect their financial reputation. Class 4. This is the good one. Saving and retirement for everyone. How to build an emergency fund. What to know about Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs. How to take advantage of your employer's retirement plans. How compounding works. How to automate savings even with a small paycheck. Outcome. Students understand the basics of building long-term security. Class 5. Investing without fear or ego. Topics. The differences between stocks, bonds, index funds, and ETFs. How to avoid gambling. How to choose an investment platform. How much money to invest and how to stay consistent. Why simple portfolios win. Outcome. Students feel confident enough to begin investing. Class 6. Work, self-employment, and everything no one explains. Topics. Health insurance and when to stay on your parents' plan. Evaluating job benefits. How freelancing works. Quarterly taxes and side gig income. When charitable giving fits into your financial life. How to find guidance if you cannot afford a planner. Outcome. Students understand the mechanics of both traditional and self-employment. Want me to teach your students? Let's talk. Can you imagine how your own life might be different if you had learned all this at 21? Let me pass this knowledge on to the next generation. I teach guest lectures, one-time workshops, and full mini courses. I can tailor the material to specific majors, industries, or demographic needs. I can teach in person or virtually. If you're a professor, administrator, or run a student program, email me. If you know someone who fits that description, forward this along. The kids are already asking the right questions. Give them someone who will answer them.